So somebody asked me just the other day why these numbers are so important to me, and I responded, they're not. These numbers really don't mean much to me. I find them interesting, especially because numbers continue to be used to beat up on New World, and I think that they actually tell a different story about MMOs like altogether, but we'll explore that in more videos coming up on the channel this week. Hello everyone and welcome. If you're new, my name's Brian. If you're a returning subscriber, welcome back, you magnificent sexy beast, you. That's a giga for subscribing, by the way. Free compliments at the start of these videos. Now, what I thought to do, this isn't a progress report or a status population update. I just wanted to talk about the impact of the March-April update and the July, I guess, August update. What did it do to the numbers? What did it do to the player population? How do we calculate all of these details? And that's what this video is going to be about. I will continue to put out my player population reports as long as those provide value to the community here going forward. But I wanted to take kind of a micro look at the weekend from this weekend and then going all the way back to the March-April update, their weekend, to kind of take a look and see how all of this plays out, what we learned from the numbers themselves. And I think it tells a really interesting story. So if you guys enjoy these kind of videos, if you feel like helping this channel out in the algorithm, that like button, leaving a comment, subscribing, all of that, helps out a ton. Only if you feel like I earn it. That's the request. If I don't earn it, hopefully I'll see you again in the future. But first and foremost, let's actually look at some green numbers. We're going to explore something here in this video, and I'm really curious to see what you think, especially as it relates to these calculations. So the last time we saw positive population growth was, in this case, April. That's right at that March, the Tempest Heart update. And now here we go into the last 30 days, and we're starting to see this climb up. We'll continue to see this climb up, but the question here is has New World found the floor in which that it becomes easier to build? Will we see consecutive growth, or will it continue to dip back down as we barrel into the 1-year anniversary? That's something that I'm really excited to explore with you. Now, how do we calculate the numbers that I'm about to share with you? Well, there's a couple of things. We use industry standard terms in terms of concurrency based off of a multiplier, and also to fact check that, we look at the time that players have played of the game, and we look at the averages that players play. Now, we adjust because we believe mmorpg players do it longer, and I think that's ultimately true. But note that we're going to be looking at the hours from this weekend to the previous weekend. We'll also be looking at numbers from this update to the new July update to kind of give you an idea of how many people return, what's the difference in player loss, and we'll explore that mathematically here for you guys today. So first and foremost, let's take a look at the previous year in terms of March. So in terms of a range of players, you can kind of see them listed here. Make sure that they actually show up well for you on the screen itself, so that way we can see it really well. Perfect. Excellent. So we can see here a range of 25,000 to 39,000 players returned during that big update based off the concurrency alone. Now, how that range is calculated, it's either 7 to an 11 multiplier. So I decided to take the low end and the high end. So on the low end, 25,000 players for the March update returned, and then for the high end, just under 40,000 players returned for that update. But obviously you can see here, based off of that alone, that the numbers then started to continue to go back downward, falling into the 20,000 range, and then in the averages of the 16, 13, and the 13 here. And the gain here is total based off of the average number of players, which at the time of this recording is at 13,600, based off of a 24-hour peak of 2604, because I'm filming this very early in the morning, if you cannot tell based off my voice alone. What will be interesting to see, what I'm looking forward to in the follow-up video to this is that, do these numbers continue to go up week over week, or was it just a weekend excitement, new update hype, and more? So that's the low end and the high end for March. Let's look at the low end and the high end for this weekend. And so when we look at the numbers themselves, going from a 7 to an 11 multiplier, we see a range of 28,000 to 44,000. This is actually a bigger return than March, but in terms of volume and kind of the ratio, clearly this update had way more potential to bring more players back than the March update did, because the March still held on to more players. How many more players? Like, what is the ultimate discrepancy between the high ends of player counts, and that's still not accounting for 122,430 players that still have yet to jump back into the game for whatever reason. Now, again, when I say we're using standard calculations, 7 to 11 is an industry standard calculation based off of concurrency, but I also like to go and calculate it based off of the hours. So if we look at, let me go and close these guys out. If we look at our total hours for the time period, in fact, actually, if I switch over here to hours, and let's find it because I closed it behind, we account for this weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, at 294 million hours played. I think that is quite substantial. That's a lot of hours overall played. If we look at the previous amount of hours played from the previous weekend, we get 956,000. So we obviously, we knew players came back, but in terms of hours, how many hours came back? This could also fall into the category that people are excited about the update. So not that many people returned overall, but we still saw a bump in hours played, and you can see that difference listed right here. This does account for 607,000 total players when you look at the total hours divided by 12. Now, why do we use 12 in this case? Based off of the COVID numbers for average amount of time gamers play per week, it equates to 8.3 hours per week played. Now, for MMOs, I use a calculation of 12 hours played because MMO players just play longer. The games will hold on to you, of course, over the course of the given week. So this roughly accounts to 48 hours per month. I decided that based off of just the weekend and the fact that people will be excited, they'll be playing through the new content, to give 12 hours to every player on average over the course of the entire weekend. Obviously, this accounts for players who just jumped in for a couple of hours versus those who maybe played 20 hours, right? So again, we're looking at the average, which accounts for 107,000 players who played the game this weekend alone based off the hours played. Now, you can kind of give it a little plus or a minus. It really just depends on what you're looking for in terms of your personal numbers, but that for me, I find very interesting. Now, if we look at the previous weekend, we can see here, based off the hours alone, still also saying that it's hyped. Obviously, it would be the hours in themselves would be much further down overall. Like, again, this is our best guess estimate. That would account for 674,000 players over the course of the last weekend, which I think is very ultimately interesting. And then if we essentially take the difference in those player bases, that accounts for 27,000, almost 28,000 players returning this weekend alone, which if we go all the way back to the start of this video, that was roughly the exact same of the 7 multiplier in terms of concurrency. So I feel like the game did bring a lot of players back. It actually probably had a couple players starting. And then the question is that what about the difference? Again, when we're still talking about a difference in 100 and like I think 112,000, 100, something, some 102,000 players still from the March update. I think overall, this is going to be something that goes with time. It's going to be something that continues to happen with marketing, and we talked about deeply regarding with expansions. Basically, I think overall this weekend shows that there's definitely a lot of interest in the game. I think that the numbers themselves look really good. And what I'm expecting to see is them to kind of dip back down to kind of more just normal, numbers. What I'm really curious to see is that if this is the floor, and to kind of finish this video off, is 13,000 the average in which that's what we see as a part of the floor, or will after the July update we see more people either take a break, less people return? And that's the only way we're going to know that is with time. There's a couple of big things on the horizon for the game that we know about as we look forward to kind of some of the PTR changes here in August, and also the big 1 year. And I'm assuming that the Brimstone Sands, the new greatsword, all of that will be kind of hitting around the 1 year mark. So it's going to be interesting to see regardless. Anyway, guys, those are the numbers. That's what the data shows me from this weekend. I'd love to know your thoughts. Any and all welcome in the comments below. Thanks so much for your time today. Hopefully I'll see you in my next video. But until then, take care.
Yeah. It's time to chill out on the couch and read some comments. That's right. You know me when it comes to destiny. I'm off with a clan, and I'm glad you're feeling better. Oh yeah.